This is the Christian Career Women podcast, and I'm your host, Ellie Nieves. I'm the founder of the Christian Career Women Network, where we help women of faith to aspire, achieve, and thrive in their careers and personal lives. Our goal is to help ambitious women of faith to succeed God's way. We invite you to join our free private Facebook group. Just search for the Christian Career Women Network on the Facebook platform. Today, we're talking about who does she work for, really? She works for him. Our guest is Martha Brangenberg. Born into an entrepreneurial family, Martha has been involved in small business her entire life. Gifted with an attention to detail and a sweet, sensitive spirit, Martha is a servant leader with a deep faith in Jesus. Martha has worked alongside her husband, Jim, for their 35 plus years of marriage, complementing him by bringing in almost a decade of retail management experience and an outstanding record of over-the-top customer service and project management. Together, Jim and Martha are passionate about living out faith at work, building strong marriages, and regularly offer marriage retreats. They have 3 grown children and 6 grandchildren. Martha, welcome to the Christian Career Women podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here today.
So really excited to hear a little bit more about you. Can you share something that we don't already know about you?
Something that you don't already know. Just personally, I am in a place where, I'm loving to do a little bit of creativity. I love to take things that are really messy and make them clean or fresh and new. And it's funny how I've seen that play out in my career. And right now I'm getting to play around with that a little bit at home, which is kind of fun to do.
Great. So we talked about your love of Jesus. What role does faith play in your career?
Well, it plays a huge part. So now for the last 8.5 years, my husband and I have been running I Work for Him, a ministry talking about connecting our faith and our work. So very integral. But before that, it really, I knew that everything that I was learning in the Bible was important in my life and I was applying it, but I didn't really see how faith could be a part of my work. And so in all of the businesses that Jim and I ran, we would apply biblical principles, have integrity, take care of people, treat them well and fair. But it wasn't until in our 40s when we started to understand that there was a different way to look at that. And so from that point forward, my faith played an even bigger part in my work because I was more intentionally looking at ways to integrate it into the conversation and into the decisions that I made and things like that. So it's been a journey because I do believe that my faith has always played a part in my life. From a very early age, I had that commitment to Jesus Christ and studied the Bible and prayed about things that were being decided. But taking it to work with me was something that really took some changing of my thinking.
Yes. So you mentioned how you and Jim launched I Work for Him as a ministry. Can you tell us what inspired you to do that?
Well, that very conversation is really what inspired it, is that through our own lives, we were seeing a difference between how we ran our business with just those biblical principles versus this idea that it was our ministry, that it was our mission field, that every single one of our customers that we had been entrusted to us so that we could steward them as a mission field. It's so interesting because people go all across the world to a different mission field from where they normally live, yet each and every one of us go to work, and that is our mission field. I really see it as no different. There's programs that are called like Work as Mission, where they are going intentionally somewhere to be like a tent maker and have a job to be able to endear people and teach them about Jesus in their life. That's what we're supposed to do every day, right? God gave us that opportunity in our workplace to shine and be that beacon of light wherever we are. So as we started to understand that that our car dealership, that our insurance agency, that whatever we were running that God had entrusted to us meant He was entrusting us with those people and their lives as well. So really the short answer, because it's, every story has a lot of details, but the short answer is that God just really prompted us to start having that conversation with other people. My husband and I are both the kind of people that when we learn something, we like to tell people, hey, this is something that's new for me. It might be helpful for you too. And Jim was actually speaking at an event, talking about 5 ways to incorporate Christ in your workplace. And we met a woman that owned a radio station. And she said, that's the kind of conversation that needs to be on the air. People are not talking about that, and there's a real need for it. So 90 days later, we found ourselves launching what at that point was 1 hour, 1 day a week, turned into five 1-hour shows, live radio every day of the week, weekdays. And then that has morphed over the years to podcasting. And we have a 1-minute where every morning we're inspiring people to, what today does it look like to take our faith to work, to inspire that. And so that's really the back end, is that we were learning things ourselves. And as we continue to learn what that looks like, just sharing that conversation with other people. And like yourself, Ellie, God is working that conversation all over the world. People realizing the purpose for our work and what He's given us. And so what God told us to do is to lift up what He's doing all over the place. So we interview people like yourself that are living that out in one way or another. And for every single person, it looks different, but it's beautiful. And being able to share that tapestry and inspire other people to look at their work differently, and to wake up tomorrow and say, or even wake up today and say, what does God have in front of me, and how can I live that out?
So true. We don't have to go and fly thousands of miles to do mission work, right? Our mission is right in front of us. It's what we do each and every day, and everyone that we interact with. So thank you for reminding us that our mission field is right here, right where we are.
Mm-hmm.
So Martha, what are some of the challenges that you faced as you were striving to achieve your career goals?
Well, I would say what's interesting is that having always been entrepreneurial, when we started sheWorks4Him, we kind of did it the same way, right? We set up a company, and we did all of the things that you need to do to start one. And then God kind of told us, this needs to be a nonprofit. I need you to let go, because that's really what a nonprofit does, right? It takes that ownership and it creates it in a different kind of a way. And so developing a board and all of those kinds of things. And so that's one challenge, is this the fact that, we know that what we're doing is not about us. It's about God, and it's about what God is doing. But to take that step and just say, okay, we're not going to own it. This is not ours. It is ours to steward, because it is God's. And so I think that's been a real challenge, just in the shifting of the mind. We still run it, my goodness, completely, with that the drive that you have when you own something. It's like you don't want it to fail, and you want to work at it, but knowing that God keeps directing us in different ways and showing us what He wants us to do. So I would say that that's a challenge. Another thing would be, there was a time early on in sheWorks4Him where Jim and I thought we would join a business, merge with a business that was up and running and doing a lot of things that we really believed in. And we thought we were going to help God. Like this was God, it's expensive to be on the radio. So we're going to help you by funding it through this business. And although it seemed like a great idea, it wasn't God's idea. And He showed us after not even quite a year that it was not what He wanted us to do. We could not build a business and build the sheWorks4Him talk show into all that it needed to be at the same time. We didn't have the energy, or, you just couldn't do it all well. And so he said, quit trying to help me, just go all in. So I think one of the things that we've learned in that process is, again, letting go and saying, this is what I thought seems like a really good idea on paper, and in the world's eyes, it would make a lot of sense. But sometimes faith makes us step away from that and say, okay, I'm going to trust you with this. We went out on faith that this was the right direction, but I think we maybe put our own decision ahead of God's. And so that was another challenging time, but being able to recognize it's better to stop what you're doing when you realize it and become obedient, again and again. Making those shifts whenever those opportunities come up is way more important than struggling in and continuing to do something where God doesn't want you to be.
That's amazing. So we already see clearly how God is using your work for the kingdom, but is there anything in particular that stands out for you on how God is using your work for the kingdom?
I would say just the amazing things that we hear from people when they say, I was inspired by somebody that I heard on your show that maybe changed their trajectory or gave them the courage to make a decision that God's been really, pressing on their heart. Knowing that when you sometimes you don't get a lot of feedback, it's so funny because people will be like, well, don't you hear from people a lot? And I'm like, well, I don't reach out to people necessarily when something is, I'm listening to somebody and it inspired me. How many times have I reached out? And so when somebody does reach out or make a comment or something, that you just know that the kingdom is being impacted. And again, it's not by what we're saying, but by being able to lift up those stories or those ministries or those books or whatever those resources are that are helping people along that path of better connecting their faith and their work.
That's so inspirational. When I think about even with myself, I like to post life events on social media or, blogging or even through the podcast. And you really don't always hear from people, but people are listening. They're paying attention. They're being inspired. Some people are even making life decisions based on some of the wisdom that they hear about during your radio show. So, keep on doing the good work, doing the Lord's work, as clearly you are touching people's lives. And thank you for all that you and Jim do.
Oh, it's been a really amazing journey to be on. And yet we know that every day we wake up and say, God, are we still doing what you want us to do? And is there something different today that I need to focus on than I was focusing on yesterday? And that's been another, new way to look at things for us, because, in business, I think often you're like, okay, I know that I need to, work on the financials, or month end is coming, or, whatever that thing is that's on your calendar. And we have definite things on our calendar, we're scheduled, we have things, priorities that we're doing, but yet it's the heart, right? It's waking up and saying, God, what is it today that really matters to you? And boy, that's hard. I mean, maybe it sounds so nice, but every day, letting, I like to have control. I like to know what's going on, and letting go and saying, okay, God, you can derail this any way you see fit if it's going to help other people. And that's a good lesson that I've been learning.
Amen. Amen. So what is a Bible verse that God's been using in your life right now?
Well, it's interesting because just recently we launched sheWorks4Him, the podcast. And one of the things that is our desire in there is to connect Christian working women to God, resources, and one another. And I truly believe that the one another part, I was kind of leaning into that and going, what does that look like? Women are great about, hey, I found this great sale at some store, I think, and you want to tell your friends about it, or you find a new YouTube person that you like to follow and you share people about, you share about it. But so much greater to share the resources of what Christian working women, how we're growing and helping each other. And I believe that women, I think we get past that mean girl stage, when all girls know what we mean when that movie, Mean Girls, it was like, that's so real. But as mature Christian working women, dig into scripture, we want to be there for each other, right? To lift each other up and not tear each other down. So I say all that to say the Bible verse that really has stuck out to me lately, and I actually made a mouse pad of it because it was so good. It's like, the godly give good advice to their friends. And that's Proverbs 12:26. And it just really struck me that it's like, if you are really following the Lord, and I pray that I'm godly, that my heart is leaning towards being like him, that I'm going to give good advice to my friends, that I'm going to look for the good. I'm going to, share that. I'm going to take that extra effort, whether it's social media or whether it's, just when you're checking out in line with a cashier, whatever that is, that we're constantly giving good advice and that we're pouring into others. And Ellie, I believe you do that all the time. There are a lot of other women that's their heart, but that's the verse behind it for me right now, Proverbs 12:26.
Well, you and Jim recently took on a project that is providing tons of advice to women, to people in the workplace, to retirees. Tell us about that project.
So when we first started, it starts by talking about when we first came into radio 8.5 years ago, and everybody was like, well, if you're going to be on the radio and you're going to have a show, you need to write a book. And we're like, well, we'll write a book when God tells us to write a book. And, yes, that's great marketing advice for people to have books. And I get all of that. But we just really felt compelled that when God gives us a story to write, we will write it. And about now going on 2 years ago, Jim came to me and said, I think it's time to write the book, but I don't think it's one, I think it's 3. And that is, I work for him, I retire for him, and she works for him. And yes, Ellie's got one right there holding it up. That's so awesome. And there's the other one, I retire and she works for him. And so these 3 books, God also said, one of our core values is collaboration, and to show these books as a very collaborative effort to communicate to those 3 different people groups, if you want to call them that, of ways how to incorporate our faith into our work and our retirement. And so there are over 52 authors and ourselves writing what it looks like to work for him, and then what it looks like to retire for him, and then the stories of either ministries or practitioners, shall we call them, sharing something that God has given them, each a message, and each one is different and each one is unique. And I believe what it does is it brings together the kingdom in a whole new way, and sharing with people as you read these different chapters, first walking through the journey of that transition in our minds of what does it look like to work for the Lord, to retire for the Lord, and then to hear how God's kind of had to chisel that out in different people's lives in different ways. And so that is kind of the crux of all 3 of those books, and they're getting out there and they're being shared, and there's so many elements to it, but the collaboration is just a blessing on the side. But having the different perspectives of so many different people saying, this is how God has worked in my life to help me live out my faith and my work better, differently, more intentionally. And then what do we do with that? How do we internalize that and allow it to change us as well? So that's the 3 books.
That's amazing. And I had the honor of being able to contribute to the sheWorks4Him version of the book. Chapter 8, I wrote a chapter on finding purpose at work. And can you tell our listeners how they can access any one of these books?
Yes. So our website, which is iwork4him.com and then /bookstore, that's where you can buy them at. We just want to get them in the hands of people. So we have a discounted price on there. If you buy 3 or more, you even get a better price. And the whole idea there in our heart is, again, it's not a marketing thing. We'd like you to get a copy of all 3 books and then figure out which one is for you and then share the other 2. And this, or, because how many of us have somebody, we're all headed someday towards retirement. So we can prepare and change our heart now towards that. Christian working women, you have someone in your life, or you can buy 3 of the same title. It doesn't really matter, but iwork4him.com /bookstore. And Ellie, I want to share, that there's a really special version of the book out there. And all the books can also be bought on Amazon. And on Amazon, you can also buy the audiobook. And what we did with the audio, which was a lot of fun and very unique, was that we had every contributing author read their own chapter. So when you listen to that book, you're not only hearing their story, but you're hearing it with their inflection, with their heart, with their emotion behind it. And to me, that just really makes it come that much more alive and be that much more real. And also, we all know we've read an audio or listened to an audio book or 2 that might have lost our interest because it just was, the same voice over and over. And this just gives you, you can listen to a different chapter every day and you've got a different person in your life every day. And so that's been really a neat aspect of having the books available by so many different authors in the audio form.
That's wonderful. You've done so much, and I know you're going to continue to do more for the kingdom. So what is next for you personally?
Personally, right now, it's really leaning into the sheWorks4Him brand a little bit more and looking at how to utilize this new podcast that we just launched on Labor Day. There are so many wonderful podcasts like yours out there for people, but they're all very different and they all have their own niche. And what sheWorks4Him, very much like I Work for Him, we want to lift up women across the whole variety, not just in one coaching group or not in just one mentoring group, we're lifting up what is God doing in the lives of women all across mostly our country. Once in a while it might be international, but mostly in the United States, just saying, what is God doing, helping Christian working women to embrace their calling. And that's really, for me, the big focus right now is just seeing how we can best steward that resource and share that story.
That's amazing. So how can our listeners get in touch with you?
Probably the best way on our iwork4him.com is an easy way, and it's iwork4him.com. There is a contact page there, and you can certainly send a message there. I'm just Martha at iwork4him.com, so it's pretty easy if you want to just email me. And I'm on all the social media platforms, and I love to engage there. LinkedIn, is a great way as well. And I would encourage any one of you that has any questions or just looking for additional resources. That's the kind of stuff I love to do. I love to say, I've heard of somebody in Kansas that, that might be a really good connection for you based on what you're telling me that you're working on, or God's working in your heart, and or somewhere else in the country. But, with technology, there's no limit to where our relationships really can take us. And so I love being able to make those connections. So Martha at iwork4him.com.
Well, Martha, thank you so much for taking the time today to share about yourself and sharing your heart with our listeners.
It's really my pleasure, Ellie. And I'm so grateful that you made a contribution to the sheWorks4Him book. And I hope that people will, if for no other reason, start by reading your chapter 8. And then you can browse around and meet some of the other ladies and read more of the contributions there that are making an impact. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And to all of our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, God bless.